Imagine finally indulging in that deeply desired experience, a rich, decadent dessert, a perfect moment of shared intimacy, or the thrill of a personal achievement. Yet, instead of pure, unadulterated joy, a faint, unsettling whisper of guilt or anxiety creeps into the afterglow. Sound familiar? This isn't just a personal quirk. It's a pervasive human experience, a shadow that often accompanies on most intense moments of pleasure. But what if this feeling isn't a natural, inherent part of our psychology? What if this guilt is a learned response, a deep-seated cultural echo, stretching back not just years, but centuries? Prepare to uncover the hidden history and complex psychology behind why pleasure often feels profoundly wrong, even when it's harmless.
We are constantly told, implicitly and explicitly, to seek happiness, to pursue joy, and to relish life's simple pleasures. Yet, simultaneously, a powerful, often subconscious programming tells many of us otherwise. This intrinsic conflict between desire and perceived duty, between personal pleasure and the threat of punishment or societal disapproval, has shaped human societies and individual psyches for millennia. Today, we will embark on a fascinating journey through history, developmental psychology, and critical philosophy to understand precisely where this phenomenon of pleasure guilt truly originates. We'll explore how it became so deeply ingrained and how it continues to influence our most intimate and personal experiences. By the end of this exploration, you will undoubtedly see your own relationship with pleasure in an entirely new, potentially liberating light. Let's rewind to a time before the widespread dominance of certain modern moral frameworks. For many ancient civilizations, pleasure was not inherently seen as sinful or something to be ashamed of. The ancient Greeks, for instance, celebrated Dionysian revelry as a path to spiritual transcendence, and Epicurean philosophy, often misunderstood, advocated for the pursuit of tranquil joy and the absence of pain. Roman banquets were legendary, not necessarily for their hedonistic excess, but for their embrace of sensory experience and communal enjoyment. Even numerous indigenous and tribal societies often integrated pleasure, sensuality, and eroticism into their spiritual and community rituals, without the heavy burden of shame that many of us carry today. These cultures, while certainly having their own distinct moral codes, generally viewed pleasure as a natural, healthy, and often divine aspect of human existence. The historical tide began to turn dramatically with the ascent of ascetic philosophies and certain foundational monotheistic traditions. A powerful new idea gained significant traction: that spiritual purity, closeness to the divine, or true enlightenment often required a deliberate renunciation of earthly delights, particularly those of the body. Pleasure, especially sensual or carnal pleasure, began to be viewed not just as a distraction from higher pursuits, but as a potential gateway to sin, moral corruption, and a fundamental sign of spiritual weakness. Self-denial and delayed gratification became paramount virtues, often explicitly contrasted with what was labeled as the dangerous indulgence of the flesh. This shift wasn't merely about controlling impulses, it was about fundamentally reframing desire itself as inherently problematic, needing constant vigilance and suppression. By the medieval era, particularly within the dominant Western Christian societies, the subjugation and regulation of pleasure, especially sexual desire, became deeply institutionalized. The human body was increasingly viewed not as a vessel for experience, but as a primary source of temptation, and pleasure, a potential weapon wielded by the devil to lead souls astray. This perspective intensified through subsequent centuries. Fast forward to the Victorian Age, and we witness an almost suffocating societal obsession with propriety and moral conduct. Respectable society imposed exceptionally strict codes that govern not only public behavior, but also private thoughts. Even natural bodily functions became subjects of polite euphemism and profound discomfort. This wasn't merely about public modesty, it permeated the most private spheres, embedding deep-seated shame into the very fabric of personal and intimate experience. From a psychological perspective,
This relentless historical and cultural conditioning explains a great deal about our present-day experience. When external moral frameworks, prohibitions, and judgments become deeply internalized, they form a crucial part of our superego, essentially the conscience that constantly judges our actions, thoughts, and most importantly, our desires. Constant societal messages equating pleasure with sin, moral weakness, or unworthiness lead to profoundly deep-seated, often unconscious, feelings of guilt and unworthiness when we do experience joy or desire. This isn't a conscious, rational choice we make. It's an automatic, learned response, a pervasive whisper of "you shouldn't," echoing from generations past, a psychological inheritance. We're, in essence, pre-programmed by history to feel this profound internal conflict.
Ironically, in our supposedly liberated and progressive modern world, the echoes of pleasure guilt persist, often manifesting in subtler, yet arguably more insidious forms. We are constantly bombarded with compelling images of hedonism, instant gratification, and boundless desire through media and advertising. Yet, simultaneously, we still grapple with a complex, often unspoken, set of rules about what constitutes appropriate or acceptable pleasure, and how much is too much. This creates a deeply confusing double standard, an implicit pressure to pursue and experience pleasure, but an equally strong, often subconscious pressure to feel slightly ashamed or guilty about it afterwards. Consider the pervasive anxiety around body image, or the lingering stigma surrounding certain forms of desire or intimacy. These are direct, powerful descendants of historical pleasure suppression. Philosophically, the pervasive question of pleasure guilt forces us to confront a fundamental tension at the heart of human existence: the dynamic between individual freedom and societal control. Can true, authentic freedom truly be possible if our most fundamental, innate desires are constantly policed, not just by external authority, but by an internalized sense of shame and unworthiness? Thinkers from Spinoza, who saw pleasure as an increase in power and perfection, to Foucault, who analyzed how power structures often manipulate and categorize our relationship with pleasure to maintain social order, have grappled with this. Understanding this isn't about advocating for reckless or irresponsible indulgence, but about reclaiming true autonomy over our own inner landscape, learning to discern genuine moral action from inherited cultural baggage and historical conditioning. So, armed with this historical and psychological understanding, how do we begin the challenging yet vital process of untangling ourselves from centuries of conditioning? The crucial first step is awareness. Recognizing that the guilt you might feel isn't an inherent, immutable truth about your desires, but rather a learned pattern, a cultural legacy. Then it's about conscious reevaluation. Ask yourself, is this feeling of guilt genuinely serving your well-being, growth, or ethical compass? Or is it merely an artifact of a past morality that no longer aligns with your personal values or understanding of the world? Practice self-compassion. Gently challenge the internal critic, and gradually work towards reframing pleasure as a healthy, natural, and vital aspect of human experience, not something to be constantly earned, justified, or regretted. The journey towards conscious, guilt-free pleasure is an ongoing and deeply personal one, requiring introspection, courage, and a willingness to question ingrained beliefs. It challenges us to redefine what it truly means to live fully and authentically, to experience joy and desire free from the heavy whispers of ancestral shame and societal pressure. If this exploration into the hidden shadow of pleasure has resonated with you, consider diving even deeper into the intricate nuances of human desire, cultural norms, and personal liberation. We've only just scratched the surface of how historical narratives profoundly shape our inner worlds and our most intimate experiences. What other deeply ingrained taboos or assumptions do you believe are ripe for re-examination? Share your thoughts below and join us for more thought-provoking insights.